Okay, guys, welcome to the Tony Restores podcast, number 4. So, thank you for being patient with all the technical difficulties I've been having. I know the last episode, the audio was once again choppy, so I think I fixed it now. I put this little foam thing on top of the mic, so that way we don't have any of that fuzziness. So, let's go ahead and get started with today's episode. So yeah, I'm sorry we missed the 7 p.m. initial airtime. Last night we had a cat emergency. So little old Robbie, we had to take him to the vet. He was a little constipated. He had a little bit of a poo butt. And we got him fixed up. So I will go ahead and start the pod late today. So, obviously, a topic that's on everybody's mind here, the huge environmental disaster, huge, in Ohio, with the train wreck. So, I don't want to spend too much time on this kind of stuff. All these ecological disasters just break my heart. I don't know when people are going to wake up that we have to start holding corporations accountable for this kind of stuff. This stuff happens all the time, and sometimes it's huge like this, where, corporations are trying to increase their bottom line and maximize profit at any cost, including the environment and the citizens. Completely careless, and not only that, the ineptitude of the local politicians and police department, and just to continue to exacerbate and make this problem worse. So here we go again, guys. Here we go again. More ecological disasters coming out of the United States of America. I mean, it never fails. Yeah, these poor East Palestine residents are just in big trouble. I mean, this Ohio River connects to a lot of other rivers, and let's just keep everybody and everybody involved in the situation in our minds. We got Governor Mike DeWine. Mike DeWine declared a state of emergency. Yeah, duh. That should have happened before you guys decided to blow it up. Yeah, so now it is confirmed, despite all the misinformation, the chemicals have spilled into the Ohio River, which covers 14 states and provides drinking water to more than 5 million people. So, yeah. So now we got 3,500 fish. And these numbers that they come up with are just hilarious. That's a made-up number. There's way more fish. This is a number created to minimize the situation, which was what they've been trying to do, and damage control it, and cover it up. That's what these companies do. So, quote, when important source waters like this are contaminated by spills caused by corporate greed and lack of protective regulations, the impacts reverberate downstream and harm communities for years. We've seen it time and time again, said Earth Justice Legislative Counsel Yulian Gonzalez. Yeah, by the way, guys, Earth Justice, awesome source for news. Check them out. So, following the explosion, state officials ordered residents living within a mile of the explosions to evacuate immediately, said River Valley Organizing Development Director Emily Wright, who lives a few miles away from the disaster site. Many East Palestine community members are sheltered in a local high school as they have nowhere else to go. Residents in other areas in Ohio surrounding the site and in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, were also told to evacuate. I mean, when is it going to end, guys? So, and here we go, petrochemicals. Almost always, this is what our plastics are made of. Everything's derived from oil and gas nowadays, and I just can't stress enough how important it is that we shift away from oil use. It's just so key, and that starts with every single individual minimizing the amount that they consume to the best of their ability, and looking and for other ways to get energy. It's the way it's got to be. The Norfolk Southern disaster unfolding in East Palatine demonstrates the lengths to which the petrochemical industry and its unregulated toxic emissions needlessly put communities in harm's way, said Adam Crone, senior attorney with Earth Justice. While we still don't know what the full extent of human exposure and health effects from this derailment, it is an urgent call to action for the EPA and other federal agencies to undo Trump-era rollbacks and strengthen the rules that protect communities from petrochemical facilities' toxic emissions. Yeah, I mean, guys, it's bad. It's bad. Just really, really bad. If you have extra money, donate directly to families who are in need. Hopefully, you go on GoFundMe. Find ways to support families that are directly affected in this community specifically, if you want to help. It's incredible. I mean, look at this. Another channel I want you guys to go follow is Dane Wigington's geoengineeringwatch.org. Please go give that a look. Dane is from Northern California, and he's been documenting what he calls planetary omnicide. We are literally in a collective delusion. His favorite analogy is, if we don't stop this now, and we are basically the driver who has gone over the guardrail on the mountain and pummeling down into a horrible crash. That's just the best way that I can describe how close we are to massive scale disaster like that. And this is just the perfect example of it. He also goes in depth on how the corporations have been manipulating the everyday citizen for decades and decades, all the way from the petrochemical industry, all the way up to government agencies using what's called, quote unquote, solar radiation management, aka chemtrails, this is no longer conspiracy theory. This is their words, to quote unquote reduce the harmful radiation from the sun and CO2 emissions and that kind of thing, and cool the planet down. The metals that they spray in these particulate clouds are supposed to reflect the sun's harmful radiation back out instead of it getting trapped greenhouse here and causing the planet to warm. So they have now openly admitted to doing this. Please, it's now not, when I was saying they were doing this 10 years ago, I was called crazy, and now it's confirmed from, anywhere from Harvard all the way up to major governments of superpower nations. So I don't want to get too negative on this, guys, because that's not the point of this podcast. That's not the point of this channel. We want to provide solutions. We want to come up with ideas. We want to be the ground level type folks who are combating this, who are not only calling it out, identifying specifically by name the biggest perpetrators, the biggest corporations that are the worst at it, and holding them accountable, and then in our own community starting our own things to unite us and restore the planet back to its natural health and state. So cool. Enough bad news for now. Again, guys, help out in any way you can for this ecological mega disaster in East Palatine, Ohio. So, on to the good news. Back to my favorite topic, fungus. So you can't, I don't know what this. This just goes into some breakdowns of how fungus is going to change the world and help us. So, this guy spent 17 years studying how soil microbial biodiversity controls the capacity of forests to act as carbon sinks, buffering the planet against climate change. In that time, breakthroughs in DNA sequencing technology and computational power allowed Avril and his team to see the forest for the fungi, as he puts it. I love that. That might be the new motto of the channel, guys. You see the forest for the trees, or whatever that old saying is, see the forest for the fungi. I think that if there's anything that you guys can do to become part of the restoration community is learn about fungus, grow your own fungus, consume safe, healthy, gourmet mushrooms and mycelium, as well as medicinal mushrooms and mycelium, and get out there in nature, in your local forests, in your local parks, and learn how to identify it. Collect spore prints, drop spore prints, plant seeds, pick up plastic that's gonna ruin the microbiome in the soil. It's almost so easy that we have to be doing it, guys. We have to be dedicating some time to taking care of the planet. And it's not just the corporations that need to be on cleanup, which of course they aren't. They're always on cover up. So it's got to start with us. It's got to start with us. There was a cool quote that I read. Let me find this, guys. It's just one of the coolest quotes. It was in relation to let me see here. It had something like, sometimes, I think it was actually Bill Nye the Science Guy quote. And it was something along the lines of, sometimes you just gotta pick up other people's trash. That's it. That's it. There's gonna be people out there who are gonna, no matter what, they're just gonna be ignorant and throw it and litter and destroy and consume. And we, the people on the other side, just have to counteract that with picking up their stuff. It's a sacrifice that we just all have to swallow. And then hopefully if enough of us on this side are doing it, that will then motivate the rest of society to then do it. So yeah, guys, get out there, get active, get in your forest, get in your parks, learn about fungi, clean up your parks, clean up your soil, wherever you're at. So our round is led by Azola Ventures, which focuses on investigating and neglecting climate opportunities. Rewilding soil fungi to accelerate tree growth and capture carbon from the air has never been done at scale before. It requires engaging with the molecular biology, the forest industry, and emerging carbon markets. It's difficult to find all that expertise in one place, so we're sort of a square peg for a lot of VCs, which is venture capitalists. For everybody who doesn't know, I'm sure that there will be other evil, greed-motivated corporations trying to get into the space. So we have to make sure that we, like-minded individuals who truly do care for the planet and want to find new ideas and solutions that aren't going to accelerate the problem, instead reduce it. So make sure we're keeping an eye on these venture capitalists and some of these companies that are getting into the space, pretending to be providing solutions when they are not. So the company says 2 major milestones are to generate fungal DNA profiles from 1,000 plus forests, which the team hopes will enable to see how the forest fungal microbiome affects forest health and carbon sequestration in unprecedented detail. The goal is to use the data set to power the company's data platform, which recommends the right combinations of wild fungi for the right location to achieve the greatest carbon sequestration outcomes. Sequestration. Sorry. The other milestone is to establish 1,000 hectares, 2,500 acres of projects where we both plant trees and plant soil fungal communities. The company wouldn't share what the valuation was for the round, but tells us that it was an equity round where roughly 1 million of safe and convertible notes were converted into equity. The company's first 1 million was raised in the summer 2022 on notes, and the remaining 3 million came as a part of the equity financing event, which closed at the end of December 2022. I am truly excited to be working with the incredible team. Okay, yeah, so he just goes on here about their plan. The company insists that the climate crisis is just one symptom of a total Earth crisis. It says that the global scale land conversion, pollution, environmental degradation is beginning to tip the planet into the 6th mass extinction event, guys. I mean, facts. It's not conspiracy theory anymore, guys. And to everybody out there who's been preaching this for decades, the writing's on the wall now. It's no longer avoidable. The being ignorant is the greatest sin of all time. It's anti-education. At this point, like I said, who cares if some of these VCs are? At least we're addressing it. We are right on the edge of the sixth mass extinction event, and the biggest perpetrators of the problem need to be held accountable, guys. It starts right there, you know. So we can do our own little thing in our communities, which is, you know, a great thing to do. But we got to get together and we got to unite and we got to start holding these companies accountable, guys. We really, really do. You know, I'm not saying get the pitchforks out, but I am saying get the picket signs out. And, you know, we're out there protesting for wages and healthcare and stuff like that. And, you know, we need to be doing the same thing for the environment. We need to be doing the same thing for the environment. We need to be saving ourselves. And all the other species on the planet. So, cool. Moving on, we're going to do our final little segment here where we go over another one of the great Terence McKenna's speeches. This one's from, or lectures. This one's from 1995 again, called Plants, Consciousness, and Transformation. So, where do I want to start this? So, okay. I'll say a few words about that before the afternoon session, but don't fret about it. We'll come clear in time. I think of this as a course as Plants in Mind, and the way I like to teach is just to begin to lay out the basic pieces of what is a very complex interdisciplinary puzzle. And hopefully at some point, your specialties, your passions, your interests will ignite the whole thing, and it will then have a dynamic of its own. We could discuss these matters for 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, or as I've done for 40, 35 years. I mean, yeah, Terence he's my personal hero. This man was a great man. Please listen to everything he has to say. There is no end to it, and very few areas of human endeavor dissolve the disciplinary boundaries of Western academia as thoroughly as the study of human and psychoactive plant interactions do. There are important issues here in biology and botany, in biography and ethnography and ethnology and psychology and neurophysiology, in the study of symbols. The number of disciplines that have be brought to bear on this subject is so important to understand our humanness, and I represent a radical point of view on these matters, and I don't imagine I was invited here to dumb it down. So, you know, if you had Darwin, you'd get a natural selection. If you had Freud, you get sexual attraction. So you got McKenna, so you're going to get psychoactive catalysis of consciousness. Before we get into all that, let me just lay out some of the field here. A human being began their career, well, we can trace it back to the primordial slime, I suppose. But our animal career was a career of insectivorous, vegetarian, and fruitarian, lived out in the arboreal canopies of the tropical rainforests. And all animal species, indeed all life, tends to be to occupy evolutionary niche and then stabilize itself in that niche. Termites, cockroaches, these sorts of organisms found their niche hundreds of millions of years ago, and have generally, nature is not progressive in its particulars. So overall, nature is progressive, but its particulars seek equilibrium always. And so it would have been in the case of our primate ancestors, so our original arboreal, tree surfing, rainforest dwelling primate ancestors. They achieved a dynamic balance with a canopy habitat, language pack signaling designed to convey danger and information about food sources, and so on and so forth. And they would have remained there had not been for a large ecodynamics of the planet. Ecodynamics which are still shaping the human habitat in Africa. Because what has been going on in Africa for at least 5 million years is the slow drying of a continent. If you guys know this, Africa, our biggest continent, this big old continent right here, it used to be as lush as an Amazon rainforest. I mean, it was where we came from, everybody. So a community of opportunistic grasses, annuals, heavy cedars, this sort of thing. Now we know that the rainforest was primarily because rainforest, just to give a broad notion, might consider over 100,000 plant species. The grassland ecosystem might as well consist of under 500 species. And all 500 grassland species can be found as rare members of the flora of the rainforest. So clearly what we have are the survivors of a process of clearing, and there is an argument among botanists about this. Carl Sauer, who was a great geographer and thinker on these matters, held that there is no such thing as natural grassland, that grasslands are the earliest artifacts of the human impact on the planet. Grasslands are created by burning, and they promote growth of cereals and so play feed in this human food chain. So our primate ancestors' ecological adaptation to arboreal life was interrupted by this process. And the key to my thinking about all this, and those who are going to have careers in all this will take it up and do more thinking about it. It's one of the great overlooked factors of any model of human evolution, and indeed in evolutionary models. Emphasis to diet. When we talk about natural selection of animal species, we tend to think that the genome expresses physical types, and the phenotype is the subject to the selection by natural environments. Some biologists, and seeing the thinness of this understanding, L.L. White wrote a book called Internal Factors in Evolution, in which he pointed out that the womb is before an organism is ever born into theater of Darwinian selection. So it isn't tabula rasa that you're born into the theater of natural selection. You have been subject to the natural selection from the very earliest moments of existence. So diet. Emphasis on diet. Diet is the input of potential mutagenic factors into the body. So this is the number one cause of consequences on the health of the individual, of a population. I've used the toolbox of ideas that I'm going to put forward here today and tomorrow to try to address what seems to be, to me, one of the sensibly interesting questions to be asked around the world. What is human consciousness? And guys, this right here, this is the thought that I ponder the most. I ponder what is human consciousness more than any other question. And thinkers and great speakers like Terence help me kind of navigate what I believe human consciousness is. So I've kind of aligned myself to Terence's point of view, and as we continue here, I hope you listen to it with an open mind. So yeah, where did it come from? Why does it all exist? I mean, I believe that we can, by thinking about psychoactive plants, diet, and the human evolutionary situation, we can make a lot of progress on this question. And we can illuminate some of our political dilemmas to that exist to this day. The gender friction that typifies human society and the hierarchy structures that they tend to create, that's a big part of it too. And then we can go on to talk about the larger mecca of psychoactive change relative to the plants, as rainforests retreated and disappeared. So as these forests began to disappear, our earliest ancestors became under heavy environmental nutritional pressure. They were losing their main food source, which was fruit. So they moved out of the trees and into the grasslands. Obviously, because this is where they got their food from, they became physically diminished. They shrank. Now, as you know probably and observe, most animal species are very particular about the food intake. And if you've ever tried to raise butterflies or something for your children, you know that if you capture a caterpillar in the wild but don't pay close attention to the plant you find it on, you can't just grass and peanut butter jar with a caterpillar to great success. Animals are highly specialized in their choice of food. Why is this? Well, as near as we can tell, even all kinds of food from an evolutionary point of view is a very reckless move indeed, because plants represent a chemical smorgasbord of various types that have accumulated over time in the genome of a particular organism. If you have a very broad-based diet, you're exposing yourself to many different kinds of mutagenic influences. As a strategy for survival of a species, this is not good. And it's much better to specialize and evolve special enzymatic pathways to deal with toxins. For instance, we know certain animals can eat things, and animal species tend to evolve toward these very blend of mono diets. So basically, what you find something in your diet, you tend not to drift away from that diet, as evolutionary biology tells us. So now what happens is when there is an upheaval in that environment, magnetic reversal of a volcanic eruption, a drought, or whatever it may be that causes a food source of nutrition to become restricted, the organism basically has two choices. You go extinct, or you starve, or you find and experiment with a new food source. So that's just kind of the way it is. So we left these forests, our ancestors, and we had to search for new foods, so up to our foods. So they began to explore the grasslands. And as I mentioned before, the grassland environment is much poorer in the total number of plant species than the rainforest. Thus, logically, the potential number of food sources is also limited. Baboons and chimpanzees will dig with sticks for the cones of swallowing the roots and grasses. As our remote ancestors began to explore this new environment, they also began to explore new dietary items. Items that they would surely have the observer of corophytic mushrooms. Many of these species of coprophytic mushrooms elaborate with psilocybin, which I assume you know is one of the major psychoactive alkaloids. Psilocybin occurs in many species of mushrooms. It is unknown outside of the fungi, but I maintain that in a sense psilocybin is the best model for human interactions with psychedelics, or that all other psychoactive plant usages are an effort to duplicate or return to or somehow evoke the original human relationship to psilocybin. And here it's not just simply psychoactive properties that make psilocybin a potential catalyst for human consciousness. It is psychoactive properties in combination with certain other properties that make it uniquely suited to carry out the role of and catalyst of consciousness in a higher animal. So basically, what Terence is saying here is the stoned ape theory, and he's one of the main creators of the theory. Is that human consciousness developed over the million or so years as we transitioned out of rainforests of Africa and moved to the grasslands and searched for new food groups, which were dwindling, in which case we not only became more omnivores, they had to do more hunting instead of, eating only fruits and grasses, but on these animal packs that they would follow, they would find psilocybin mushrooms. And this chemical, as we're about to go on here, the psychoactive molecule, has untold amounts of medicinal and consciousness-raising properties. So he believes that this is where we gained our consciousness, is from this, and this is where we evolutionarily mutated into anatomically modern human beings. That, along with over time cooking meat, he argues that psilocybin and these type of dietary changes were the evolutionary pressure that caused us to become human and caused our brains to go so big and caused us to gain what we now call human consciousness. So, but not just that, there's other properties and things that come from ingestion of psilocybin too. So, first of all, in very low doses, psilocybin increases visual acuity. So if you want to go back into the literature, Roland Fisher in the mid-60s took graduate students and gave them small amounts of psilocybin or a placebo. He built an apparatus where two parallel strips of metal could be deformed by winding a crank. And he asked people to push a button when the two strips seemed to cease and be parallel, and he demonstrated that the edge detection is enhanced by small amounts of psilocybin. Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize that edge detection is at a very high premium in any grassland situation where predation is taking place. The lion moving in the grass 300 yards away as it creeps up on your camp, or the gazelle trying to slip away in the tall grass from a hunting party. Edge detection is key, very key, guys, to the success or failure of hunting in any kind of situation. So, I mean, this is just factually true. And it's proven here in many duplicated actual studies that low doses of psilocybin increase your visual acuity. So it's very, very possible that we became such efficient hunters and tool builders and smarter because evolutionarily over long periods of time we started consuming this new dietary source of nutrition, which was in fact psilocybin cubensis, or other versions of mushrooms that grow in these grassland environments. So it's extraordinarily it's slightly enhanced success in hunting and slightly enhanced nutritional resources for them and their offspring. So presumably inoculated into the habitat is also eating the mushrooms. What we have here is a slight favoring in them. So those animals in the population that accepted the psilocybin or started eating the mushrooms would then outbreed and continue to be better hunters than those packs of our ancestors that did not. So, like all CNS stimulants that cause arousal is simply a feeling of unfocused restlessness. It's that 2 espresso feeling. So what he's talking about here is psilocybin makes you horny, guys. And it's a big time fact if you've ever used it, especially in a low dose, anything from half a gram to about a gram, there is certainly a feeling of restlessness and arousal. So sleep is implausible and enhanced, and you get busy at small tasks, and one is aware of a sphere of awareness that extends out somewhat further. In highly sexualized animals like primates, arousal means erection in the male. And this is a very important theory because when we not only have to account for human consciousness, but we have to account for the peculiar dislocation that human consciousness seems to carry with it, that we are both of nature and yet not of nature, somehow creatures with 1 foot in nature and 1 foot in heaven. And how does this come about? I believe, and I know you're willing to argue against it at all corners, that the key element to our understanding sociology and all our sexual politics and all that is to realize that psilocybin had 2 effects in early human populations that were using it. One, we're very familiar with, if we were psychedelic sophisticates ourselves, it's a psychedelic experience, the boundary dissolution shamanic hypothesis that occurs. Yeah, I mean, the boundary dissolution and the beauty that comes with the psychedelic experience, guys, is something very difficult to put in words. I can't advocate enough for those of you that haven't tried it to please get out there and experiment with that. It is a beautiful, beautiful experience when done right. Find your local community to be able to find these type of things, or like I said, grow them yourself, and do more research on Terrence and his brother Dennis and guys like Paul Stamets. They have plenty of content out there on YouTube as well for you guys to research and dive into the subject. So continuing on here. With that being said, with the boundary dissolution and the psilocybin, the tendency to form dominance hierarchies. And this is very controversial. In other words, what I'm saying is that all primates form dominance hierarchies. And what that means is, to remind you, they order the old, the homosexual, the young, everybody is under their thumb. And part of our dilemma as a global society is that though we claim great sophistication, we still live under this male dominance hierarchy. Corporations, universities, family structures, the long-fanged males are still ordering around the elderly, the weak, and the females among us. Creates great social dislocation and political unhappiness and tension in relationships, and so on and so forth. I believe that our unique position in the animal world arose as a consequence of a chemical suppression of a natural behavior pattern. The pattern of male dominance, of forming male dominance hierarchies, was interrupted by an item in the diet, psilocybin. And into this chaos, this egalitarian chaos, which resulted was a situation in which everything about us that we treasure and hold up as humans was put into place. In other words, words, theater, language, dance, story, altruism, ethics, metaphysics, poetry, everything that makes us human came into being roughly, 100,000, 200,000, about 15,000 years ago. People lived in balance with the earth. with the larger biome in which they were embedded. There was not the product of this fetishism ushering in enormous toxic processes involving the smelting of metals and the extraction of raw elements from the earth. So, interesting theory, guys. Now you could object and say, well, that they simply weren't sophisticated enough to do those things and maintain that comparing us and finding us favorably compromised civilization of Homer, Altamira is simply a form of cultural chauvinism. Okay, but psilocybin had other effects besides the suppression of male dominance that I mentioned. This increased sexual activity, the visual acuity. But I didn't draw the correct conclusion there. Then it's reasonable for you to expect that you will have more pregnancies and reasonable to expect that therefore will have a tendency to outbreed than the non-psilocybin members of the population. So greater food gathering capacity, increased sexual activity will then tend to outbreed the non-psilocybin apes. Period. I mean, that seems pretty solid to me. Then on top of all this, you have ecstatic internal state for which within all the culture and epistemic sophistication are still unable to come to terms with. The mystery of the psychedelic experience. Now these things are taken together with factors from working in parallel created, I think, the dilemma and the glory of the opportunity of humanness. It all comes down to the nutritional pressure to expand our diet when we drifted to the edge of omnivorousness. Period. I mean, I think that's a great theory. Because recall in the canopy, we were not simply vegetarians. We were not insectivores. In the grassland environment, we began probably to originally follow along behind lions and that sort of thing, and eat off their kills, more like scavengers. One evolutionary theory is that our suppressed olfactory apparatus, the fact that we have very limited sense of smell, is because there was a period in our evolution we did a lot of rooting around on carcasses. This is not a noble image at all, but it's the reality. It's the countervailing theory, because you don't like that one, is a sense of smell, is because we stood upright. So we picked our faces up off the ground, and that's where we lost our sense of smell, and which is obviously in tons of other mammals their most powerful sense. So a couple of years that is definitely not PC is that I've noticed that my attention was called to it by Philip Devolshley, who is a friend of mine. I don't know who this is. Let's give this a quick search. Okay, I don't know what that's about. Cows have very little interest in the habitats of chipmunks or birds or anything else. All they do is munch grass. Carnivores, on the other hand, have an acute interest in the behavior of other animals. In fact, I'm willing to argue that the earliest consciousness was not self-consciousness, it was consciousness of how dinner thought. Because if you can think like your dinner, you can go out and plant yourself in its path of behavior and have dinner. You guys get it? You see? If you're a predator, you have to be able to think like your prey. And the best predators are the ones that think like their prey. So, and then you can spot the difference in between the species that do and don't. The intelligence level is striking. And I think that this attention to the behavior of other animals on the part of the emerging new habitats of carnivorous behavior is going to have to be taken into consideration. It's interesting that shamanism, which is in a sense the earliest intellectual pursuit, so to speak, so the earliest thinkers in these 100,000, 200,000, potentially million-year-old primitive, primate ancestors, had a technique for identifying these animals. Hunting magic is what we're talking about here. So I think that there is a very interesting mix of these factors and players in the human evolutionary situation. So, that being said, that's a great start to this beautifully put together lecture that Terrence has here, guys. So, I mean, again, this stoned ape theory is something I wholeheartedly believe in. I think that there is a ton of evidence to support it. And that being said, it all relates back to our other topics for the day. We need to move and shift our society away from this male-dominated hierarchy structure of corporate feudalism and slavery. And I truly believe that psychedelics, specifically psilocybin, create this boundary dissolution. And if we can get the movement large enough, and get enough studies out there and get the real information in people's hands about the psychedelics experience and about psilocybin, we can change the world. We can get rid of this male-dominated hierarchy structure of organization that we have for humanity, and move more towards a partnership with Mother Gaia, and move more towards a partnership with how we manage our resources, manage society, manage civilization, manage reproduction, manage, basically move away from corporate greed and consumption and move towards loving and caring and partnership society. It's really not that difficult of a concept to understand. So sadly, it would appear that in our early human battle for a Darwinian evolutionary survival, there was these competing strains of early hominids, and some maybe were psilocybin users, and some, maybe further on in history, another disaster would happen, another natural disaster, and that strained what was at one time a psilocybin using community and species to then be forced away from psilocybin again. And that's when we kind of devolved back into this male-dominated hierarchical structure of species organization again, very, very primate brain-like, and went down the wrong path again. So I think we're entering another precipice here of evolutionary history where we have now a chance to shift back into that type of thing. We can now mass produce psilocybin in a grand scale and study it on a level that's never been done before to find out and maximize the best uses for it. So I'm super excited about the future, guys. Super optimistic. Despite all this negative stuff that happens, I mean, this is just the reality of our world, and all we can do is get up every day and swing the bat. Get up every day and get excited about new technologies. Get excited about restoring the planet. And at times, get angry. Get angry at these corporations. Get angry at Governor Mike DeWine and these politicians for allowing these corporations to just have a free-for-all with the environment. Get angry. Don't get too angry, because anger isn't a great emotion. It is an emotion, so you have to experience it as a human being. But after that anger simmers, get smart. Think of ideas. Close your eyes and really think about it. I say this all the time in my restoration videos of items. If you're thrifting, you're out there at Goodwill or wherever have you. Take a look at an item and be patient with it. Sit there, look at it, close your eyes, think for 60 seconds, open them, look at it again for 60, close it, close your eyes for 60, and really just use your imagination on what that future piece can be. So same thing applies to the environment, guys, and same thing applies to new ideas on how we can hold people like our political leaders and people like these corporations to account. So we have to stop ruining the planet, guys, in pursuit of corporate greed. So hopefully this recorded properly, the quality's okay, and the audio and the video. I don't know if I have the chat running properly. If you guys have been talking to the chat, I apologize. It looks like there's only 2 people in here, but hopefully more people will watch once it's uploaded to the channel. So again, guys, thanks so much for your support. Really appreciate you. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. As always, live that green revolution, y'all. Appreciate you and love you. Later.